Hello everyone and welcome back to Marvel Mondays. This week I'm going to be taking a look at a Marvel Select figure. It feels like it's been a very long time since I had a chance to review one of these figures because the Marvel Select line really seems to trickle out these days. They're not quite as fast and furious as they used to be, but I'm really pleased when we do get them because they are really impressive and I love everything about the Marvel Select line. So it's fantastic to finally have my hands on the Vision joining this fantastic line. Obviously a strong fan favourite character. It's great to have another Avenger in the 7-inch scale joining the Select lineup, so this is very exciting. And if we start by looking at the packaging, of course we can see it's got the pretty standard Marvel Select packaging we've come to know and love from Diamond Select Toys. I really like this branding approach. We have all the different collage of different images of the character across the years, sort of greyed out, in this case greened out. I think this looks really good. It's obviously a big, thick, chunky packaging, not quite as thick as we've seen from the standard line. It's a little bit thinner, more like the Disney Store exclusives that we're used to seeing, so it's a little bit thinner, which is actually probably going to be helpful to those who want to stack these on the shelves. You get a bit more space, which is always really helpful. But this looks really nice. Obviously, this makes a big impression having this on display. If you want to use the peg hole and put them on the wall, if you just want to put them on your shelf facing forward, this looks fantastic. Very bright, very colourful, and it makes a very strong impression straight away. And likewise, when we flip the packaging over, we can see the rest of that collage there. We see some larger images, which looks really very nice. Of course, we have a big image of the figure himself as well, and a little bit of text there. Not too much to make it a bit overwhelming, but just enough to add a little bit of interest, a little bit of bio about the character. And all in all, this looks really nice, however you choose to put it on display. And when you open the figure up, he doesn't disappoint. Now, I do have some criticisms of this figure, which I will get into, but overall, his actual presentation, his look and his style just looks really nice straight off the bat. First up, Headsculpt looks really good, and I have to say, I'm really impressed with this collar as well. They found a way to do this. This is obviously a hard, solid plastic, so it is sculpted perfectly as you would want it to look. So this looks absolutely great. I think they've really captured the spirit and the essence of the character. This is a great, serene, sort of neutral expression on his face. He does come with an alternate head, which we'll look at a little bit later as well, which has a bit more expression in it, but this is a really good look for the character, and I think looks really nice and pretty comic book accurate. Likewise, the body moulding looks pretty solid to me. I can't argue with this. I think this looks very nice. They might have recycled some of these parts from some of the other characters. Obviously, he's in that medium build, which is entirely appropriate for this character. And I think the overall paint apps are very nicely applied. Obviously, they've applied a lot of shading to this character to give him a little bit more depth and texture, which is absolutely what you expect from this line. And it works an absolute treat. So he still manages to be bright and colourful and make a really strong classic Vision impression on you. But he has a lot of texture to him as well, which is lovely to see. And of course his gloves and his gauntlets and his chest piece are all sculpted in, which is absolutely fantastic. And of course this runs through the entire body, so we can see of course he has those specially sculpted in boots there at the bottom, and it all looks seamless and perfectly in proportion with itself, which is lovely. Now let's take a look at this cape. Now, as I said, I was really pleased with the collar. Of course, they had to sculpt this in a very hard plastic to make sure that that collar stayed in place, which is great, but it's not so great for the rest of the cape because obviously it means it can't move. It is nicely sculpted, so it looks like it's waving in the wind a little bit, which is lovely. It's got some nice shading in there, again, giving it a bit of texture, but it is massively limiting when it comes to being able to put it in any kind of dynamic posing, and it does hinder the articulation, particularly in that upper torso joint. And whilst I'm talking about the articulation, I will point out he does have a ball joint in the head, so of course he can look up and down, he can move from side to side, and there's a pretty decent range of motion here. It's not exceptional, but it's pretty good to do what you want him to do. He's got ball joints in the shoulders, which actually kick up a good distance all the way up and out. There's a complementary bicep swivel there. There is a pin swivel at the elbow that allows the arm to rotate all the way around and hinge to about 90 degrees, which is pretty decent all in all and looks pretty good. There is another pin swivel at the wrist, of course, so that wrist rotates all the way around and again hinges forwards and backwards. Now he does have a ball joint in the upper torso, which means he can move from side to side, he can lean left and right, and he can move forwards and backwards, or at least that's the theory. But this is where that cape comes into play, and it really stops him from bending back all the way and getting the most out of this figure, as you can see. Now he's got the ball joint in the hips, which are actually quite neatly disguised, so the legs will kick out to the side. There's an upper thigh swivel there as well. The legs can kick forwards, they can go back a little bit, not much, and then there's another pin swivel at the knee. So that lower leg can move all the way around, and of course it will hinge to about 90 degrees. Again, you've got to fight the cape to be able to get any position out of this, but it can be done if you persevere. Finally, there is an ankle pivot there that will allow that foot to move from side to side but hinge forwards and backwards as well. But that's not all, because he does come with a host of extra goodies as well, including an alternate head. This is a more of a snarling, aggressive head, which is really cool. He has a flat hand, another hand, but with a special effect, sort of power beam effect coming out of his hand, which is pretty cool. And then he has these two separate pieces that kind of fit together, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. So these extra pieces are pretty interesting. I particularly like the combination of having this sort of slightly more hostile head with this power effect hand. This looks really cool, makes a fantastic display. It looks like a proper action piece. You can create a lot of different dynamic poses and interesting displays with this hand. Now, the alternate set of power effects, I wasn't quite sure what to do with these. They don't fit onto any hand in particular. They don't seem to fit together. It seems like you have to remove the hand and just slot them in to the joint directly. I suppose it's the idea of the power is so bright that it completely eliminates the hand altogether. This is quite cool. I quite like that it has this sort of dish effect with the power beam coming through it. It's like a big explosion. I think this looks really nice. They've done a good job of the overall presentation of this. It doesn't look quite right, it doesn't look quite in proportion because it is missing the hand. It just looks a little bit too close to the arm and the chest, but maybe that's just me. All in all though, this is very nicely presented, and there's a good range of extra bits and pieces to just really flesh out the character, so I do appreciate them giving them these extra bits and pieces. Now, in terms of scaling, we've said, of course, this Marvel Select Vision is 7 inches tall, but to give you a sense of how the Marvel Select line stacks up, here he is standing next to the Marvel Select Immortal Hulk figure that was released a couple of years ago. As you can see, there's a huge height differential between them. These look really, really good together. These look properly in scale to what we'd expect in the comic books. I think this looks absolutely fantastic, very consistent with what we'd expect as long-term fans, and I think it's a great, they're in great proportion, both of them. So this looks really good. I think the Vision is very, very nicely done. He's in all the right proportions and it's scaled up perfectly. So then, in terms of my final thoughts, well, I'm going to give this figure 4 stars. I really like this figure. I think they've done an awfully great job with the presentation of this figure. You would expect that from Marvel Select. They used to be very much like mini statues. They've continued that, but managed to enhance the articulation and the accessories, and there's no exception here. This is a really nicely sculpted, very finely painted and shaded action figure. It's got all the articulation you would want, and it overall looks fantastic. He's got some fun accessories there as well to make him a bit more dynamic when it comes to put him on display. The only criticism I have of this figure really comes down to that cape really blocking some of the articulation and being able to maximize the most we could get from this figure. But other than that, this is a really fun figure. I think they've done a great job of bringing this to life in action figure form, bringing him to the 7-inch scale, and making him look really authentic, fun, but also detailed and textured, which is brilliant stuff. So if you're a fan of the classic Vision, I have no hesitation recommending this figure to you. I would warn you a little bit about the limitations of the articulation, but other than that, this is a really fun figure, and if you like the more detailed approach, then this is the one for you. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.